Welcome to Inspirational Journeys, everyone. My name is Ann Harrison, and today I have a couple of things I want to share with you. Well, one big news item before we get to our topic. So, unfortunately, I had to take a hiatus last week because I had cellulitis again, though thankfully, and I appreciate everybody's prayers, that it was a very mild case, and I didn't have nearly the pain that I had last year when I had when I had the infection. So, and I thank God for that. And I went to the doctor earlier, so I got the antibiotics I needed. Thanks for all your prayers and the love and support that you've shown during this time. Especially to all my writer friends and my listeners. Thanks for all your prayers and your thoughts that came my way. But the big news is that my audiobook version of The Spirit of Creativity, Inspirational Poems for the Creative at Heart came out what was it? Wednesday morning. Early Wednesday morning. It was about 12:49, I think is when I got the email. So late Tuesday night, early Wednesday morning of last week. Today's 17th, November 10th. November 10th, it was released. Yay! Yes, and I do have an audio sample for podcast listeners. For those of you watching on YouTube, the trailer is up there. Go to my channel and look for the trailer. I can also provide it in the show notes later on if you would like. I'll provide it in the show notes for tonight's book launch. My narrator, Lillian Eves, and her partner, Vincent Lee Grayson, are coming on to the show tonight to talk about to talk about what inspired them to become audiobook narrators and the narration process and, how that works. And then we're going to do a launch party because we got some special surprises at the end. So do stay tuned for that. I will be doing that tonight. But before we get to that, let's get to our topic for today. Because I was going to do this last week, but like I said, I had to take a hiatus. And I had a lot going on. But last week was the end of week 2 of National Novel Writing Month, NaNoWriMo, which I've fallen behind on, and I'm very well aware of that. But I am doing my best to catch up. And for those of you listening, if you're doing NaNoWriMo, do not fear if you do not get to 50,000 words. You are still a NaNoWriMo winner because no matter how many words you get in this month, it's more words than what you had to start out with, okay? We are in the midst of week 3, and all I can do is to encourage you to keep going. Not only are we in the midst of the week 3, I promised you step 2 of the Snowflake method on Monday when I did that last Saturday. Well, that didn't happen. Today's Tuesday. We're still going to go forward with it. So let's start. First of all, remember the first things you had to do was write down your genre or category, as Randy Ingermanson calls it. Write down what type of story you want to write and why the story would delight your audience or make your audience happy, however you want to write that. After you got those done and figured out who your audience is, then you did your 1-sentence summary. If you've done that, if you've caught up with me, if you've downloaded the link that I provided last week when we did this, then I will definitely, then you can follow along. If you haven't downloaded it and you need the link again, please let me know. I will be happy to send you that link because it is a freebie. Or if you, it is a freebie. I was going to say I'd send it to you, but I don't know that would be a good idea because it's not mine to send, but do go to the website and download it from there, okay? Let me know if you need that link, and I can certainly get it to you. I will give it to you here on audio and video, too. It's advancedfictionwriting.com/free. That's where you need to go. Go back to last week's show episode, whether it be the YouTube video or the podcast episode. The link is actually there. So do be looking out for that, and please do follow along. Now that we've talked about step 1, let me get into step 2. I'm going to move to my document, so do bear with me for a second. All right, now step 2 of the Snowflake method. You're going to write, after your 1-sentence summary, you're going to expand on it, write a 1-paragraph summary. he suggests giving yourself 1 hour. Sometimes that may be a little shorter than what you need. Sometimes it may be a little longer than what you need. But however long it takes you, an hour, 2 to 3 hours, 20 minutes, whatever. Give yourself that time to be creative, okay? Expand your 1-sentence summary into a full paragraph of at least 5 sentences. For one, my 1 paragraph summary is 7 sentences because 7's my lucky number, of course. But you can do 5, you can do 7, but you don't want to do no more than that because then you'll get into a longer description, and we'll get to that later on as we go through the method. So here's what you need to do to organize your summary, okay? Explain the setting and the story backdrop, and introduce 1 or 2 lead characters. Maybe your primary. For me, it would be Katrina Dobson, who is the primary character. I would introduce her. That's where the first, that first sentence goes into. And then you do summarize, what is this? Act 1. That's right, ending with your first disaster. This disaster forces you, your lead character, to commit to the story. So for me, I write mystery, okay? I write mysteries, psychological thrillers, YA thriller, whatever. And my disaster, even though in the prologue it leads up to the accident that caused her to lose her sight, that's not the inciting incident. That just pulls you, that just hooks you in. But your first disaster is the inciting incident. If you've listened to K.M. Wineland or other people talk about story structure, if you've read Save the Cat Writes a Novel, if you've watched author tubers like Alexa Dunn, and others, and if you've done the short story, the story structure course through Readsy, if you've done that as well, you will hear the inciting incident. Randy Ingermanson, for the Snowflake, when he wrote the book How to Write a Novel Using the Snowflake Method, he called it the first disaster, which is what I really like, and that's the inciting incident. The body that's found, for me, it would be the body in the dorm advisor's office. I'm not going to give too much away here, but whatever your first disaster is, no matter what genre you write, that first disaster is what commits your character to the story he or she is playing out in your novel, okay? Now, the next thing you want to do, summarize the first half of Act 2, ending with your second disaster. This disaster causes your lead character to change his thinking from a false premise to the true one. As a result, your lead character commits to a new way of thinking, of thinking and acting for the second half of the story. So basically what you want to do, I was reading that and I know I didn't read it quite right because my Braille display is acting really goofy, but let me put it to you in, okay, false moral premise. So if you listen to K.M. Wineland's Helping Writers Become Authors, I know I'm adding little nuggets from other places as we're talking about the Snowflake method, but this is what brought it home for me, okay? She talks about the character's lie, okay? Randy Ingermanson, in his book, How to Write Your Novel Using the Snowflake Method, he calls it the false moral premise, which is basically the same thing. So the second disaster happens, say for example, somebody disappears in your story, or there's another body, or something happens. There has to be another disaster that happens here, which changes the way your character, the lie that your character believes, and helps him or her to see the true moral premise, the true theme of the story, the truth about herself, about the conflict that she's facing, and about the story overall, the overall story arc. So that's why, and then it changes her way of thinking, so that now that she believes the truth, not the innermost lie. This is where the first half of the second act comes into play. So that, there's a sentence that talks about that, adding your second disaster. Okay, now we're going to move on to the next part. Summarize the second half of Act 2, ending with your third disaster. This is the dark night of the soul. This is where all hope is gone. For example, Katrina has a mentor named Jessica Parker. This is where she loses her friend Jessica because she's found dead. I don't want to spoil it too much because I'm still working out the details and planning it, but this is where your character, your main character, or the character your lead is working with, loses something or someone near and dear to them, and all hope is gone. This disaster causes your lead character and your villain, if you have one, to commit to ending the story. So this is right before the final showdown, the climax, the conflict that you're going to face. Yes, all hope is gone, but another character or someone pushes that character forward back into the story to face that conflict, to find the resolution, to find an end, a happy ending. We'll get to the end of that, and that's, you don't have to write the whole thing. You're summarizing this in one paragraph summary. So each sentence has these different parts. Okay. Now, after you've written your Dark Night of the Soul, and your main character, your protagonist, and your antagonist are about to meet for the climax, for the ultimate showdown, as I like to call it. This is the end of the second act, or in the first part of the third act. Okay, so the final sentence: summarize Act 3, in which you lead up to the final showdown. The lead character either succeeds or fails. You then resolve the story at a happy ending, sad ending, or bittersweet ending. What did I say about the final showdown? Randy Ingermanson, in his book, How to Write a Novel Using the Snowflake Method, in chapter 20, with the summary, he actually says the final showdown, which is that climax to the story. This is where your protagonist faces your villain, for example. I'm not going to go into a lot of spoilers, but this is where they face the villain, and something has to happen in order to save the protagonist's life and to catch the villain. Or this is where, say in a romance, one of your lead characters, because I've read this before, one of your lead characters is about to leave. She's about to leave the island that she's on. But before she can, her partner, her lover, her romantic interest comes to her rescue and woos her back. And then that's the resolution. I've read Christian romances like that. Unlike with the mystery, and which I don't want to give too much away, really, because I'm still working some of these details out. I'm still working that conflict ending, and I honestly have been going between step 3 and step 5 because because some of my primary characters, which I thought were minors, have actually been added. So that's how you summarize step 2. The first act with the first disaster. Well, first of all, in your first sentence, you're going to summarize the setting, the backdrop, and introduce your first character. In the second sentence, you're going to summarize the first act, ending with your first disaster, which is your inciting incident. The third sentence, you're going to do the first part of the second act, which is where your second disaster comes in, and your character discovers that the lie she believes in is false, and she discovers the truth about herself and her story and the situation she's in, and changes her mindset. And then you're going to write a sentence finishing up ending the second act with the third disaster, the dark night of the soul, where all hope is gone, but then another character jumpstarts her, it pushes her into finding the truth, to resolving the story. Then you're finally going to summarize the third act, the final showdown, the climax where your protagonist faces your villain, or whatever genre you're writing. It doesn't matter what genre you're writing. If protagonist faces your villain, the villain is brought to justice, the protagonist is saved, then you come up with a resolution. You explain how and why the other incidents before happened, and then you either come to a happy ending, a bittersweet ending, a happy ending, a sad ending, or a bittersweet ending. Does your character succeed? Does your character fail? And why? In that last sentence, that's what you want to describe. So that's how you do step 2. Next time, not tomorrow. Well, I'll do an interview tonight. But next week, we will talk about the third step, which starts with your characters. We talked about plot. Now we're going to move to characters. So stay tuned for that. And I hope you guys have a blessed day. And thanks for listening to Inspirational Journeys. I will talk to you later. Take care now. Bye-bye.